There's this interesting study that was performed in the 60s by Beth Jarman and George Land. And this was a famous study at the time because they would normally make the study for kids who went to, not for kids, for NASA research scientists. And the whole idea was, can I see how divergent, how creative you are in solving problems? Because certainly when you're NASA and you're sending people to space, when there's a problem, that problem has never happened before. So you need someone who is very, very divergent to be able to solve the problem. But this test, right, which basically was a version that helped to identify whether there were good NASA research scientists that were divergent in their approaches, they did a version of that for children. And they followed those children from the age of 5 to 15, and then they did the same test to adults who were at the age of 21. The kids that were 5 years old were able to solve a problem divergently, as in creatively, 98% of the time. By the time they were 10 years old, take a guess roughly what the percentage was.
By the time they were 10?
Yes, or 8 or 10. Well, anyway, a few years into
down to 80 or something?
30. Oof. 30%. By the time they were teenagers, it was something like maybe 10, 12%, and the adults scored an amazing 2%. Wow. And the conclusion that came from that, which was the body of a lot of other people's works as well, was that schools actually educate us out of creativity. That we as humans are actually born creatively, and the systems in place actually destroy the creativity aspect because it wasn't welcome. Now that makes sense, because from an educational standpoint, the Victorian school system wasn't there to create creative people who are disruptive, who are maybe destructive in some of their ideas because they're too creative. You want people who have order and who behave, right? So we have to make sure that they follow instructions, so you turn them into robots. And that's basically what the education system hasn't emerged from in many places. There's some exceptions, like when you look at the Finnish education system, which emphasizes empathy and so on. That's sort of an example of something that's progressive. But generally speaking, we still force our kids to memorize dates and do things.
Montessori schools?
Well, Montessori is different. Montessori is definitely much more on the creative side and much more on the sort of empathy side. But Montessori is basically a kindergarten program, right? For most people. Then, unfortunately, when you think about college placements and that kind of stuff, they have to bring you into a conventional program. And that basically means you start to sort of go in a completely different direction that may be not positive for your creativity. Whereas I remember, decades ago when we were having these debates, people said, I can teach you creativity, right? I mean, maybe you can enhance creativity that is in there, but you can't teach creativity because that's innate in us. We all have different creative ideas and we can evolve from that. And this to me is also the saving grace about things about AI, because I don't think AI is creative in that sense. It can create creative outputs. What you see with Midjourney and Stability, amazing stuff they can do. But who are they creating it for? Who is deriving pleasure from the work that AI makes? The AI? It's humans. And who says, hey, this is beautiful? Not the AI. Humans, right? So in other words, this outcome, this output is a value that is still our creativity, our root, our source. So I believe, for instance, that what happens with AI is that it enhances and brings out more of what we already have inside us because we can explore it deeper and faster. For instance, I can run through images in Midjourney at a pace and speed that I wouldn't be able to do, and then I get broader, better ideas that simply appeal to me. I don't believe it's a case of the AI is influencing me as to what I should like, because actually the opinion is still mine, right? When I'm eating something, if someone makes some food, it's still my taste. You might like it, I might not like it, right? And we see this. You show one picture, you give 10 people to look at this picture, they will all rate it differently. They're not going to say, we all like this, we all prefer this one, because we're different, right? So I think at the end of the day, I think if we keep that at root and we consider who we are as creative species, then actually I think we have a lot of, we will have a productive relationship with our AIs because it unlocks creativity, as the calculator did literally in the most primitive form, 30, 40 years ago, unlocking people's creativity because, math became a commodity. Now we're able to do this in a much more super scale level, right? So I think that's a powerful thing. I would also close with this thought, though, that it is critical, though, that we own a piece of this AI. And how do we own it? This is where digital property rights comes in, because our data is actually what fuels the AI. So we must have a paradigm in which you can own that. There's a famous example where Getty Images sued the creators of Stability AI. And they sued them because they could tell that their images were used to train their learning models. But how? Because they forgot to remove the Getty Images watermark, so which was probably sloppy. But most people won't have a watermark to spot. So what is that fingerprint watermark system? It's on-chain dynamics. It's Web3.
Yeah, that was the perfect example of a lack of digital property rights, right? Because you had a real output that was changing the world, but that learned on other people's data, and luckily the Getty watermark spit out, and you could see an example. But how many other examples were there? Countless.
There's probably millions of cases in which there was infringement that you have absolutely no idea, because how do you do that, right? How do you spot what the source is?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I think this is where why you need to have your assets on chain is so critical. The other thing is that on-chain dynamics proves in a copyright/trademark kind of way that you were the original source of that idea, right? Which means all sorts of things that you're creating actually are able to have this timestamp through NFTs that you can immortalize as a way of saying, I did this first, or I had this idea. Originality and authenticity is going to be much more important than necessarily the ability to produce something really beautiful.
Right, and then the ability for us to track that will actually create bigger economies.
Absolutely.
Which is what you go back to America. If you have real property rights, it expands the economy. When you have this nebulous uncertainty, it actually doesn't.
Well, think about intellectual property rights. One of the reasons why America became the innovation powerhouse in the world is because they were one of the first countries in the world to truly protect and defend intellectual property rights. It wasn't just physical property rights. Right. They acknowledged invention. Now, there are other countries in the world, most notably places like China. They only started to respect the intellectual property rights really in the 80s, and it happened very slowly. But then, when they finally started doing it in the mid-80s, actually, and then eventually progressing much more so in the 90s, that's when you had intellectual property rights development. Up until then, what was the Greater China region? A haven for piracy. Everyone was copying stuff. In fact, copying was considered a form of flattery. There was no way of protecting it. Software, like fake Microsoft Office and like Windows 95 or whatever it was, or like Windows DOS or whatever, is simply everywhere that you could find, right? Like I don't know if you went to Hong Kong in the 90s, but you could literally walk in broad daylight into a store and go buy pirated software, right? And in the beginning, it might seem like a good deal because, American innovation, you can get it for free in China or in Hong Kong. But what was the downside? No software industry in China and Hong Kong. Why would you do it? Then no innovation, no development, and oops, you're falling behind. And they recognize that. So they reverse course, and to the point where, now China is probably is a bigger producer of patents than the United States, right? Mm. But that thing has to happen first. So this intellectual property right is effectively how we could also think of somewhat data rights as well. If you have that right, new possibilities come about because you now have the ability to value it.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real, and he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. The greedy bankers are about to do it again. In 2008, they crashed our financial system and nearly bankrupted the entire global economy. Then they received trillions of dollars in government bailouts. And after, they demanded fat bonuses paid for by you, the taxpayer.
It turns out the banks haven't just been screwing the American taxpayers, they're also screwing over their investors. Turns out the banking industry is the worst place you could put your money, despite enormous taxpayer bailouts.
Now the bankers are back to take away your financial freedom. They lie and tell you that cryptocurrency isn't safe. They try to make it illegal for you to choose how to invest your hard-earned money. They lie and say cryptocurrency is used by money launderers and criminals. But look at the record. It's the banks themselves that launder hundreds of billions of dollars every year to the biggest criminal operations in the world.
Leaked documents have revealed how some UK banks have helped criminals, money launderers and Russians under sanctions.
American authorities discovered that the Sinaloa cartel moved $881 million through HSBC accounts as bank officials turned a blind eye to the illegality.
The bankers lie and say cryptocurrency is not a real investment. Meanwhile, the smartest CEOs in the world are buying billions and billions of it. The truth is that banks lie about cryptocurrency because it makes them scared. The banks take $9 trillion per year of your hard-earned money, and they are worried that they will finally be exposed. They're scared because crypto means they can no longer control your money, which means they can no longer control you. They are scared because you might actually understand your money and intelligently decide what to do with it. Now is the time for us to come together, fight back, and take control. It's time to educate ourselves, our families, and our communities. Because financial education means financial freedom. We know that cryptocurrencies will help us build the new decentralized financial system of the future. A banking system that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. A banking system where access to finance is a fundamental human right. A banking system that is free and fair and welcomes all humans on this earth. The DeFi revolution is happening. We, the people, can no longer be fooled. We choose to take control of our finances. We choose to take control of our freedom. We choose to take control of our future. Join us, and let's take back our financial freedom forever.